associate at Gamos East Africa under the MECS program, usually convening these sessions on behalf of Gamos East Africa. So for those of us who are joining, I see majority of us are members already, but for the sake of I've seen a new person on the call. This is a community of eCooking community of practice, which we usually convene monthly dialogues aiming to basically bring discussions around e-cooking and also trying to bring together the actors within the clean cooking space and the e-cooking electricity access sector just to strengthen the emerging e-cooking sector. So we usually have discussions around policy issues. We share insights and knowledges around e-cooking and also opportunities around e-cooking with the CoP members. So this CoP community is convened by Gamos East Africa, African Center for Technology Studies, Clean Cooking Association of Kenya, CCAK, and Kenya Power, and we are supported under the MECS program. So we usually have these discussions on the eCooking Community of Practice WhatsApp group. I'll share the link as the discussion progresses, and we usually also discuss these issues around e-cooking through the virtual dialogues like the one we're having today. So I'll also pin our YouTube channel where we document these webinars for those who are able to watch later on after this call. We would also like to encourage you to introduce yourself on the chat. Sorry, I'm looking at the people who are joining now, and it's a bit distracting. Sorry about that. Yeah, so what I'm saying is we can also introduce ourselves on the chat and leave any comments as the discussion continues for the speakers to respond to after their presentation. For today's dialogue, we are going to be focusing on reviewing the draft national energy policy, which I think it's really a great opportunity for us as stakeholders in the space to have our to share our thoughts and our views on the draft policy so that it's more comprehensive and inclusive. So I think this is really an opportunity that we should take advantage of and share our thoughts as Dr. Faith will be presenting. So John, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. Maybe you can project that part. Yeah. So our speakers are Dr. Faith. Majority of us already know the work Dr. Faith is doing. She's the Director of Renewable Energy in the Ministry of Energy, and she also was an award winner of Women in Energy East Africa 2019. She holds PhD in Strategic Business Management from Aalborg University in Denmark. In collaboration with Moi University here in Kenya. She has master's degree in environmental planning and management from Kenyatta University. Apart from that, majority of us already know Dr. Faith is a change maker. She's the person who's been behind development of the strategies, the Kenya National Cooking Strategy, and also the Kenya e-cooking strategy. She's put her foot forward basically to spearhead these discussions, even the engagements that we've been having within the clean cooking space. So I think majority of us already know Dr. Faith and the work she's been able to do. Our other speaker is going to be Dr. John Leary, a senior research associate at MECS. Okay, we were seeing your chat, John. Okay, yeah, a senior research associate at Modern Energy Cooking Services and also the co-director of Gamos East Africa. Dr. John Leary, majority of us refer to him as the electricity guy. If Irene is in the call, she's a witness of people referring to John as the electricity guy because of his passion for electric cooking and also just leading the conversations that we're having around electric cooking. So their work can speak for themselves. We don't need to give them an introduction. They're already known. And I would like to give them an opportunity to take us through this session. So for a start, I think it's Dr. Faith who is going to take us through the broader overview of the process that it took to come to where we are with the draft policy. So Dr. Faith, I would like to give you an opportunity to take us through that overview, and then we'll give it back to John to take us through looking at the policy from an electric cooking lens. So Dr. Faith, please, if you would like to take the floor.
There's something I've shared. I don't know if you can see it.
Did you share it on the chat?
No. I've requested to share. I don't know if I have permissions.
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
Yeah, we could see your screen, Faith.
You could see it?
Yeah, it wasn't in presenter mode yet, but we can see the slides in editing mode.
Yeah, okay. Let me. Yeah, I'm in a meeting, please. Let me just start by thanking Citros for the kind introduction that she has given me. I will be presenting a short overview of the draft policy and where we are at the moment. Many of you may be aware that we are going to the public review process in the course of next week. So I'll just take you up to the point where the policy has reached before the public review. And of course, this session is meant to give us more information or to get information from you regarding how we can improve this policy, strengthen it, and make it work for us. So in my presentation, I have the layout of the draft energy policy. I have also the policy objectives, the areas of focus, and the main highlights. And lastly, I will talk about pending activities in the review process. So in the layout, we have adopted the guiding framework that has been prescribed by the Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. We have the Public Policy Handbook, which is available and can be shared to anybody who is interested. And using that framework, we have come up with the following outline. The draft policy has got the foreword, the preface, and the executive summary. These are normal, whatever stuff that we put in documents just to explain why the document is there and giving an overall summary before you get into the finer details. In chapter 1, we have the introduction, which gives the role of energy in national development. I think we are all aware of why energy is needed. I don't think I will belabor that. It also has the background, rationale, justification, and scope. Then it also outlines the policy objectives and guiding principles. Generally, the way we approached the policy development process is each sector, like now for clean cooking, we had to brainstorm on the policy objectives and the guiding principles. This is the political alignment and structure of the policy document. And in chapter 2, we have the situation analysis, which gives the status of the energy sector with its challenges and opportunities. The approach we gave this situation analysis for the specific sectors of the policy, we were doing a small background. What are the issues within, like in clean cooking, what are the issues? If in electric cooking, what are the issues? And we also highlighted the challenges. What are the challenges affecting the growth of the cooking sector? Why is it that the cooking sector cannot move forward at the moment? We also identified the various opportunities that would help us to take the sector forward. Then in chapter 3, we generated from the situation analysis, the challenges and the opportunities, we generated energy policy statements. And these are statements that are really now committing the government to what we would like to do to help the sector to move forward. We did this for both the clean cooking, electric cooking, and the LPG and bioenergy sections. So I will not delve into the details of that because today our focus is on the electric sector. Chapter 4 has the frameworks for implementing the energy policy and mainly the coordination and administrative frameworks, the institutional framework. Then we have the legal and regulatory framework and the funding arrangements. Then lastly, chapter 5 gives the monitoring and evaluation, learning and reporting framework. In the annexes, we have the implementation matrix, and there's also the Okay, I think the monitoring framework is in chapter 5, but basically the last part of the policy has got the annexes. So the policy objectives are about, they revolve around the promotion of renewable energy resource development. And I think this is pertinent because we have under our responsibility the need to increase the proportion of renewable energy in the generation mix, which we have done so well so far, standing at 94%. Then we also have the desire to achieve universal access to electricity. This is elaborated in the Kenya National Electrification Strategy. We also desire to have universal access to clean cooking by 2030. And just to remind you, the strategy, electric cooking and the National Cooking Transition Strategy, they talk about the date 2028. But in the main policy, we have agreed to take that date back to the 2030 that was there in line with the Vision 2030. And here we are just facing the reality on the ground and noting that the 2028 goal is really very close by, and we are still shaping up things. So it may not be really realistic to start putting 2028 in the policy document. So the other policy objective is on promotion of local and regional energy trade. I think there's a lot that needs to happen in terms of energy trade. Maybe a lot of it has been happening in the electricity sector, but the cooking sector also needs to gear up and start reaching out. What can the counties exchange on energy trade? What can the country also exchange with our neighbors on energy trade? The other issue is mobilization of funding for energy projects. Without funds, energy projects cannot move on, and government funds alone are not sufficient. So we need to reach out to development partners. We need to reach out to private sector, civil society, and other interested parties who would like to invest in the Kenyan energy sector so that this sector can move forward. Then there's the objective of achieving competitive energy procurement and pricing. This is pertinent in the sense that energy is the driver of the economy, and if we don't have the right pricing, we simply cannot move the economy forward. So we need to strike a balance between what we are doing and the pricing of energy so that people can afford and investors can come in because of the affordable pricing of energy. We need to develop and modernize and optimize energy infrastructure. I think this is without doubt a need in the sense that the world is moving forward. There's a lot of innovation that is going on. So we need to keep track of the innovation in the energy infrastructure that is happening around the world and bring it down to our country. Promotion of energy efficiency and conservation. When we are promoting cooking, essentially clean cooking, we are essentially promoting energy efficiency. And here we are really emphasizing the careful use and efficient use of the energy that we have access to. We have been promoting the use of EPCs, which are some of the most efficient equipment in the cooking sector. And energy efficiency is part and parcel of the cooking. Then we need to enhance institutional capacity and governance and collaborative frameworks. This is without doubt a need in the sense that without the capacity, there's nothing, without proper governance, there's nothing, we cannot move this sector forward. We need also to collaborate with other people who have common interests. Then promoting local content and optimizing human capacity across the energy sector. This is also very pertinent for us as a policy objective. Local content, we need to develop our local situation. If we are relying on imports, I think we are not really speaking to what the country needs. We also need to look at what can we do locally that can also be used to inform or can be exported to other countries. Then green industrialization, environmental and social sustainability, these are all items that are spoken about in environmental sustainability, the greenhouse gas emission, protecting our environment is of premium importance to us. We need to reduce the climate change effects. So industrialization is one of the focuses of the beta agenda. So we need to really focus on this and move forward the country accordingly. So the areas of focus in the policy, we have 3 pillars. One is powering the economy, the other one is improving livelihoods, and the other one is environmental sustainability. So under pillar 1, powering the economy, we have listed quite a number of things under electricity generation, transmission, distribution, trade, reliability, demand stimulation. Then we also have green industrialization, we have energy efficiency, energy financing, research innovation, and ICT. We are all going digital, so we need to change with the world. We need to move where the world is moving to. Improving livelihoods, access to clean energy is of prime importance. And this speaks to electricity access, clean cooking access. For purposes that we know, we cannot industrialize without electricity access. Clean cooking access is important for health and environmental protection. Just transition, whose transition are we implementing, and what justice are we looking at? We need to be just in the way we implement our energy programs. There's the issue of gender equality. We are looking at gender equality, diversity, and social inclusion. Indeed, the issue of women, men, the vulnerable, the disabled, and the youth, we need to encompass all these in our discussions in the energy sector. Prudent land utilization, system reliability, green industrialization, innovation. I think I've talked about that, so I will not belabor. So there's also environmental sustainability, the development of renewables, energy transition. How are we transitioning this energy sector, like the current, where we are from and where are we going? We need to define where we want to go. So the policy really contains a lot of things relating to where the country wants to move to in terms of the energy transition. We have encompassed the diverse and productive uses of energy. This is part of the policy discussion. Clean cooking is also part of it. Energy efficiency, both e-cooking and e-mobility, green hydrogen. Sustainable aviation fuels is appearing in our policy for the first time. And this is related to the exploitation of the bioenergy that we have. We are also looking at sustainable exploitation of bioenergy for cogeneration, gasification, and waste to energy. So the main highlights have been summarized as follows. Energy access, we are emphasizing the clean cooking and electricity access initiatives. System reliability and infrastructure modernization, we are emphasizing ancillary services, storage systems, grid enhancement, automation, and smart grids. And innovative and green financing, we are looking at asset monetization, public-private partnerships, green fund, carbon trading, and other modes of financing for the energy sector. Then power procurement and pricing, we are looking at the innovative financing, transparency, and competitive procurement. Power trade, there's the regional power trade, local power markets, open access, bulk selling, net metering, and electricity retailing. Just transition and inclusivity, we are looking at the local content and local manufacturing. Capacity building, we need to develop the local capacity and also develop the required skills within the different aspects of the energy sector. Innovation and emerging technologies, we are looking at green hydrogen, local manufacturing, green industrialization, productive use, carbon capture, and critical energy minerals, which everybody is clamoring for across the world. Then climate change and sustainability, we are looking at climate adaptation, mitigation, and resilience throughout the value chains within the energy sector. And governance, accountability, and transparency, we would like to enhance transparency. We would like to enhance competitiveness and accountability in energy sector initiatives, operations, and processes. So the pending activities which will eventually culminate in this draft policy becoming a sessional paper, include presentation of the draft policy to the CS and PS, which is scheduled for, okay, this date is a bit, this calendar is a bit outdated. I think we need to update it. So we also submit the document to the sagas and stakeholders. This has already been done, I think. Public notice for publication. Yeah, these are things that have already, from 1 to 3, these are things that have already occurred, and therefore we are just following the calendar. The stakeholder engagement is already scheduled and it's on course. We are doing this next week. We have people going to 7 regions in the country to brief people on the policy and collect feedback. We are also meeting to discuss comments and endorsement of draft policy after public participation. This is scheduled to happen between 24th and 27th of March. Then later on, we will incorporate the comments from public participation. Then we have a national validation workshop and the parliamentary process, and then the launch and publication of the sessional paper. So that marks the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I hand back to you, Cyprus. Thank you for the opportunity. And this presentation, courtesy Anne Kiburi, who I think you are on the call. Thanks for putting together the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Faith, for that precise presentation, very straight to the point and really highlighting critical issues. So I'd like to give this next slot to Dr. John Leary now to give us the electrical cooking lens of this national energy policy. Dr. John.
Thank you, Cyprus, and thank you, Dr. Faith, for giving us that big picture overview of this process that we're feeding into. It has been a very long process that has had many different windows for participation throughout it, from sector stakeholders and now the public. I think it's a really important process, as you say, for the next 10 years. This is what will define the nation's energy policy, and many other initiatives will be built upon this document. So it's really important that we scrutinize it and make sure that the things that are important for us and the work that we're doing are adequately captured and supported in here. So I'm going to zoom in now and look at this policy from an electric cooking lens. Of course, there are many lenses that you can look at it from, but aligning with the ethos of the community of practice, then zooming into the sections where electric cooking is specifically mentioned. It is mentioned under several of the themes, including energy efficiency, demand stimulation, clean cooking, and bioenergy. But there are 2 dedicated or 3 dedicated electric cooking sections. So we have in section 2, this is the situational analysis, a short section on electric cooking specifically, and that's accompanied by a series of policy statements. So the situational analysis is what is happening in the country right now, and the policy statements are what is the government going to do to take advantage of the opportunities and tackle some of the challenges. And then there's an annex which we noted in the previous review was actually omitted from this draft that went out for public review, but was prepared by the energy policy team, and we can take a look at that today to see how those policy statements are going to be in. So I'm going to flick over to the right now and give you a whistle-stop tour in case any of you have not had time to look at the document itself in advance. And then I'm going to take you to some of the comments which have been submitted by 5 different organizations. So big thank you to KTH, who I think are on the call here, to REREC, to Village Infrastructure Angels, to Bern, who I think are also on the call with us as well, and then from the MECS and CCAK teams. So thank you for submitting comments in advance. We hope to embellish these today with other opinions and thoughts from the group throughout the discussion. So flicking over to the policy itself, Cyprus, could you confirm whether you can now see the energy policy document?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So it's going to be a bit of scrolling here, but I just wanted to give you an impression of what the document looks like in case you hadn't had a chance to look at it. So this is the content that Faith gave us a high-level overview of. the introduction, situational analysis, the energy policy statements, the monitoring, evaluation, learning and reporting, and then the implementation plan. So you can see in here, electric cooking sits underneath the clean cooking and bioenergy section, both in chapter 2 and in chapter 3. So just scrolling very quickly through here, because I just want to give you a very high level overview of some of the mentions to electric cooking, which I've highlighted here. So the introduction is quite general, but we see, for example, opportunities here in the electricity distribution section around growing demand through electric cooking, electricity retail. This isn't specifically around electric cooking, but an opportunity where electric cooking can leverage some of the developments within the sector. We see further down in the demand stimulation section, then again, electric cooking is mentioned here quite strongly. And then here is the clean cooking and bioenergy section. So this first section is very much from a multi-fuel lens across all of the different clean cooking solutions. Then we have some of the key solutions mentioned in dedicated sections here, including LPG and electric cooking. So this section that we see here is one of the main sections where we have a situational analysis drawn from the National Electric Cooking Strategy. And then we have some of the key challenges in the sector and some of the key opportunities. So I'm just going to pause here a little bit so that people can take stock of some of these key areas where electric cooking has been unpacked. We see the current situation in terms of access, appliance ownership, usage as part of the stack. And then we see some of the challenges in terms of supply chain, reliability of electricity supply, tariff structure, uptake of e-cooking solutions, cultural barriers, awareness, the quality assurance, regulatory framework, fiscal policy, and then opportunities, of course. We have now the growing access to electricity and its suitability for cooking, enabling demand stimulation, green grid. We have opportunities to develop a favorable tariff structure, and then we have carbon financing as a key driver for growth. So I'm going to keep scrolling down, but anyone that would like to look at this in more detail, then you can find the policy itself on the, I suppose, correct me if I'm wrong, but it should have been on the invitation for this session here. And if not, you can find it on the Ministry of Energy downloads page under public participation. So just type in Ministry of Energy downloads into Google and you'll be able to find it. So scrolling down a bit further, we have the other clean cooking fuels and technologies, other sections on bioenergy. We have some other mentions down here in the energy transition section. We also have energy efficiency further down. So it's a bit of scrolling here. Hopefully you're not feeling seasick yet. And then we go into the energy policy statement. So the structure of this section is exactly the same as the section 2 above. And it says, what is the government actually going to do in response to these challenges and opportunities that have been identified? So one thing I noticed as I was reading through is that whilst electric cooking is mentioned very strongly in many sections in chapter 2, there aren't so many mentions of it within chapter 2. So that's perhaps something that we can explore. How can the actions that the government is going to take in these specific themes address the opportunities and challenges that have been identified in the earlier sections. So this is the dedicated electric cooking section here. So again, I'm just going to pause for a moment here to look at some of the things that the government has proposed doing to leverage the opportunities and tackle the challenges. So specifically, we have incentivization for local manufacturers of energy efficient e-cooking solutions. So this is a broad term here. I know Stuart from Village Infrastructure Angels highlighted the lack of mentions of solar electric cooking within the chapter 3, the policy statements. I don't think what is said here actively excludes solar electric cooking, but perhaps it could be adapted to more actively include off-grid as well as grid-connected solutions, because many people, when they read this, I imagine, will just be thinking of AC appliances plugged into a grid connection. The second one we see is innovative financing programs to develop supply chains, facilitating the evolution of electricity supply and electric cooking loads in parallel. So this is pointing to the LCPDP, the least cost power development program or planning process, as a way of ensuring that the generation, transmission and distribution infrastructure grows in parallel with electric cooking demand. Fiscal incentives to promote affordability, strengthening the quality assurance ecosystem, and then enhancing awareness and building capacity. So I'm not going to go that much further because I don't think there are that many more mentions. Perhaps there's one here in demand stimulation, but the main other mentions of electric cooking were in the section that were omitted, which is the implementation matrices. So I've highlighted this one in red here in energy efficiency conservation because I realized that was an obvious one where in chapter 2, electric cooking and e-mobility were highlighted as opportunities, but when you come to chapter 3, it's only electric vehicles which are illustrated or highlighted within the policy statements. So let me flip over to the additional document, which we also circulated on email later, which was, this is the implementation matrices. So the rest of this document is already available in the annexes at the end of the document, but it's just this e-cooking section which had got lost in the process of compiling the various different inputs from the different groups. So this is one of the key things that we as a community need to do to ensure that the different elements that have been drafted by the many different teams who are working on here don't get lost in these many different cycles of compiling, condensing, reviewing, embellishing, and then compiling, condensing, etc. It's been a huge process, and of course bits and pieces are going to get lost in that cycle. So this was one of the things that didn't quite make it in, but we have a good draft here, and it's something that we can work on strengthening as well as ensuring its inclusion in the next draft of this policy. So every row here aligns to one of the rows in the section 3. So every policy statement essentially is a strategy mentioned here in the first column. So for example, for incentivizing local manufacturers of energy efficient e-cooking solutions, then the expected output is the development of a framework for incentivizing these solutions. The KPI that's been listed is a needs assessment for incentivizing e-cooking solutions. I've highlighted that in red because I thought that was kind of a precursor to the expected output rather than a key performance indicator, i.e. something like the implementation of those solutions. But we can come back to that later. Time frame for implementation. Cost hasn't yet been put in here, but I don't think it has for any of the interventions. Where's the funding going to come from? And then who is responsible for implementing, both in terms of leadership and supporting. So the next one is around supply chain development, innovative financing mechanisms, carbon finance, investment prospectus, developing programs, capacity needs assessment, etc. as key performance indicators. Again, I'm not going to go through each one of these in details, just in the interest of time, but I just wanted to give you a flavor of the different ways in which e-cooking has been included in the policy itself. So there's another 2 pages of this, which unpack each of those 5 policy statements, evolution of electricity planning, fiscal incentives, and then strengthening the e-cooking appliance quality assurance system. So these are really detailing the ways in which this is going to be implemented in practice. Sorry, there's actually a 6th one as well, enhancing awareness and developing skills and knowledge on energy efficient e-cooking solutions. So it's really good to see that the energy efficiency angle is emphasized throughout in terms of the types of e-cooking solutions that are going to be promoted. So that's the end of the implementation matrix. And then the last document I wanted to come to was the combined comments. So thank you to CIPROS for pulling together the various different feedbacks that we received from the different stakeholders who shared comments in advance. We've compiled this now as both general comments and as specific comments. And I wanted to just highlight a few of these here. We had some comments on the intersectionality of electric cooking that is mentioned very strongly in the specific sections in clean cooking, the clean cooking and bioenergy section, but could be strengthened in some of the areas, particularly in section 3, around how electric cooking supports the growth and particularly the financial sustainability and social impact of the electricity access sector. We also had some comments on the emission of the implementation matrix that I mentioned. The tariff, which was mentioned at various times in section 2, but was not mentioned specifically in section 3, i.e. there's no strong policy statement for what the government is actually going to do about implementing an electric cooking tariff. We also had a comment around solar electric cooking, which I mentioned earlier from the VIA team. So it was mentioned briefly in section 2 in a situational analysis, but there's no differentiation between solar electric cooking and grid connected, despite the differing needs of those two sectors, especially around financing for solar electric cooking, which, as Stuart is stating here, involves buying all of your cooking needs for the next 10 to 20 years, which is very different to most other cooking technologies, with the exception of perhaps something like biogas, where again, you have no fuel costs, just a small maintenance cost throughout the lifetime of the device. Just to give you a flavor of some of the other specific comments, so again, mentioning the opportunity to tackle the clean cooking challenge, utilizing the enhanced access to electricity in the introductory section is a key opportunity. Connecting to the net zero aspirations in the demand stimulation section. Again, this is a similar one here. High electrification rate is a key opportunity. Solar electric cooking, carbon financing could have been strengthened in terms of the generation of high integrity credits through high IoT enabled appliances. Low awareness as a challenge. The different range of technologies, battery storage, etc., off-grid technologies. Integrated energy planning. So it was highlighted that most of the planning tools focus on electricity planning, but there are several, including the on-stove, onset soft links mentioned here by Babak from KTH, about the connect between the electricity access and clean cooking dimensions. Again, the electricity pricing, some concrete suggestions for how we can include that as a policy statement. And then in carbon markets, ensuring that the key energy sector activities, particularly clean cooking, are included under the whitelist for Article 6 transactions, so that we're able to access compliance markets once those are fully operationalized. Adding in electric cooking into the energy efficiency section alongside e-mobility. And then again, clarifying those KPIs in the implementation matrix and ensuring that if a policy statement on electricity pricing, tariffs, etc., is added, that it's also added into that implementation matrix. Otherwise, nothing will get done about it. RERIC also noted that they should be included under the responsibility section and are keen to be involved with the implementation of electric cooking initiatives as the organisation with the mandate for the promotion of renewable electricity and rural electrification. So let me stop there. That's a lot of information, particularly for those that have not read the document yet, but I hope that's given you a flavour of how electric cooking is already mentioned in the document and some pointers that the community have already shared as to how the issue of electric cooking could be strengthened both within the dedicated electric cooking sections and in the other interlinked sections, which also touch on electric cooking. So I'd like to open up the floor now. We have another 45 minutes left where we can hear from the audience on whether there are other areas where we could strengthen the way that electric cooking has been dealt with by the energy policy, and hear from people about whether electric cooking could be better approached by the energy policy as a whole. So let me pause there and open up for questions. I think we haven't really seen any questions come in from the chat as far as I can see, but please do feel free to put questions on there as we start with the open dialogue. Let me open it up now. And if you've got a question, please either put up your hand, or given that it's the first question now, please feel free to just unmute and ask your question directly. So the floor is open. So the silence is quite deafening at the moment. So let me break it by just correcting Babak's affiliation. I think I earlier mentioned that he was affiliated to KTH, which I think is where he was studying previously, but is now affiliated to SE for All. Babak, I don't know whether you still retain your KTH affiliation as well. If you do, please do unmute and correct me again there.
Thank you, John. No, fully SE for All.
Okay, fantastic. And yeah, thank you again for your comments, which you shared in advance. Is there anything you would like to add to those comments to kick us off on the discussion today?
I think nothing really. I think some of my comments were highlighted in yellow, which I'm fine with. I focused a lot on the technical part of it because that's my background with the tools. I think there were some mentions of dedicated geospatial clean cooking not being mentioned in the overarching literature, but then there's references to geospatial planning in electrification. I do think that type of planning could help quite a bit, drawing from what WRI has already done in their Energy Access Explorers, but also the work that KTH is doing. There's also the team behind REM at ITM that have been doing quite a bit of work on this as well. So that's a lot of my comments, but there's also a lot on the challenges and opportunities. I think when some of these challenges are mentioned, it would be good to be a bit more explicit on how these challenges are supposed to be tackled. But those were some of the comments that I had. But I'm interested to hear from the rest of the group.
Fantastic, Babak. Yeah, thank you. I think perhaps it might be worth noting that the energy policy document is a very high-level document that covers many different sectors. So the level of detail that it can go down to is relatively limited. I know that there are many other documents which were prepared in advance, definitely hundreds, if not thousands of pages of background documentation and draft sections from each of these thematic areas were prepared, and they were condensed and then embellished and embellished in many different cycles to try and come up with a document that we see today. So I think it might be quite limited in terms of the level of detail of the specific planning tools, etc., that could be mentioned, but definitely mentioning the fact that there are now tools that can take that integrated approach and connect between the electricity access and the clean cooking sectors, I think is an important fact to note. So I see we have several other people here who also commented on the document, so that we can warm up the room and get some further input from people who might also want to comment. Could I maybe ask some of those people who already commented and have collected their thoughts to help us get the discussion flowing? Kigueru, I know you submitted some comments on behalf of Bern. Is there anything you would like to share, either in respect to those specific comments or anything that may have come to mind during the discussion here? And then after hearing from Kigueru, I'd like to open it up, and I really hope someone is going to put up their hand whilst you're speaking, and we can come to you afterwards and hear your perspective on how well eCooking has been captured in the national energy policy. Kigueru, would you mind sharing some of your thoughts on the policy as Bern's electric cooking policy lead?
All right. Thank you, John. On my end, I have noted, like you mentioned, the energy policy is a high-level document, so it's we cannot go much into the details. But in chapter 2, I realized, I don't think I put this in the comments, there was minimal link between the electrification rate in Kenya, or the planning, and linking it to electric cooking. So I think there's just one mention, actually the one that you've highlighted in chapter 2 of electric cooking. So I think that is one thing I've noted. Number 2 is on the what do you call it? Energy efficiency. I think chapter 3 as well, where it has mentioned electric vehicles alone. So there's no mention of electric cooking. So that's the 2 things I'd like to mention it. Then something I've noted, I would like to ask rather for, to the rest of the team is, will you also put that the connectivity rate is also high in Kenya, besides the electrification rate?
Sorry, just on that last point, you said the connectivity rate in addition to the electrification rate. Could you just unpack that a bit, please?
Okay. The policy document essentially integrates 2 things: electricity access rate and electric cooking. But it doesn't mention the electric connectivity rate. I know the access rate is around 80%, and the connectivity rate might be around 70% thereabouts. In the recent housing budget service, it says it's around 69.something%. Will it be okay, all right to also include the connectivity rate as well?
So when you're saying connectivity, that's connectivity to KPLC's main grid?
Yes.
Okay, so differentiating between off-grid and grid-connected households.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I know that is unpacked in things like, for example, Kenya Power's annual report, but it tends to get lumped together as one kind of broader statistic. Dr. Faith, maybe could I ask you to comment on that request, whether it would be possible to unpack those 2 statistics so that the policy shows the difference in off-grid and grid-connected electricity access? Dr. Faith, are you still with us? You're muted if you're talking.
Sorry, I was muted.
No worries. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that it's better to have people from the electricity sector commenting on this, because the way the electricity sector was structured, if you look at the document, it does not really highlight the off-grid sector from the main grid. So I don't know. Maybe they can make adjustments. It could be one of the requests you could make in the comment section. Does that suffice?
I think so, yeah. And I do see someone here who is very qualified to talk about this. So Kitala is on the call here. I know Kitala has been involved in the recent update of the National Electrification Strategy. So Kitala, would you mind if I picked on you and asked you to comment on Kigweri's request around differentiating connectivity to KPLC's grid from electricity access more broadly, i.e. mini grids and solar home systems and other off-grid systems? Kitala, you are muted if you're talking. Okay, maybe he stepped out for a second. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on that? Anyone that's more involved on the electricity sector side?
Hi, John.
The list here. Kitala, yes. Did you hear the question?
Yeah, I was struggling to unmute. Sorry, I'm not very sure whether I got the question very clearly, but just briefly, from the ongoing process of review of the Kenya National Electrification Strategy, I think access, the strategy looked at access and access in a more holistic way, including both from grid connectivity, but also from the off-grid sources. And ultimately, the figure that has been given there includes both those from the grid and also from the off-grid sources. And what I can also say briefly is the fact that as part of the demand forecasting, what has been included in the strategy also took into cognizance the projections that had been given from the Kenya National Cooking Transition Strategy. So looking at the proportion of households that are expected to transition to e-cooking, and therefore that was included as part of the demand projection in the Kenya National Electrification Strategy. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kitala. And I'm flicking back to the implementation matrix because this is a really important step towards the implementing policy statement number 3. So facilitating the evolution of electrical supply and use infrastructure and e-cooking loads in parallel. So previously, then there were demand forecasts for electric cooking, but they were based upon organic growth within the sector and were very, very minimal. And I think this is the first time that we've seen the forecasts from the much more ambitious program outlined in the National Electric Cooking Strategy incorporated into the broader electricity sector planning. I understand from colleagues at EPRA that's also happened through the next, the most recent update of the medium-term planning or MTP. So really great to see that connection between cooking sector policy and electricity sector policy. So I haven't seen any hands go up, but I see many qualified people on the call here who I'm sure have a lot to say. So I'd really like to open it up and to have someone who's not yet spoken comment on what they think of the coverage of electric cooking within the policy. So please, someone who's not spoken yet, if you could tell us what you think of it, even if it's as short as yes, you think it's great, or no, you think it's terrible. Please tell us, and if you can, try and unpack and give us some constructive suggestions that we could include in the consolidated submission back to the National Energy Policy team. So just to kind of unpack that a little bit, the public review is happening at the moment. So anybody can send an individual submission back to the details that were given on the public review notice. So you can submit a perspective from your individual point of view, from your organization's point of view, or you can get involved in these various different aggregation processes that are ongoing at the moment by the different subsector groups, of which this e-cooking community of practice process is just one. So it is really important that not just from the e-cooking perspective, but also from the broader energy sector perspective, that you do engage with this document and make sure that the issues relevant to you and your organization are covered. So on that note, let me open up the floor and see whether we have any other thoughts from our very highly qualified set of electric cooking experts that we have on the call here. Maybe if I could invite someone from the NDEV team who have been very active in supporting the growth of the electric cooking sector. I see we have several representatives on the call here today. Is there anyone from the NDEV team who is brave enough to unmute and share some of your perspectives, however brief? Okay, I see a question has come in from someone on the chat. So NDEV team, you're off the hook for the moment, but I really would like to hear from one of you. I see we have Monica and we have Jimmy and we have Tobiko all on the call here. Susan has said, is the document you are projecting on the MOEP website? No, this document is not on the MOEP website. So this is the set of implementation matrices that were prepared by the Clean Cooking and Bioenergy Working Group, which were supposed to have been aggregated into the set of implementation matrices for all of the different thematic areas. But at some point in that process, then the matrix on electric cooking was omitted. So it didn't make it into that document, but it should have been there. And we did circulate this one in advance on the invitation to this call today, so that you had a chance to look at what should have been in there. And this, of course, will be one of the key comments that we submit. Please remember to include this implementation matrix in the updated version of the policy after public review. Cyprius, maybe could I ask, are you able to drop the link directly to the Ministry of Energy page, the downloads page, into the chat, just in case anyone has not seen the main policy document? And then perhaps if it's also possible to link to this set of implementation matrices, perhaps the version on our SharePoint, so that others that are on the call here and maybe wanting to scrutinize these documents a little bit more during the call or afterwards can do so. Samuel, I would like to give you the floor to give us the NDEV perspective. Please go ahead. And Kitala, do you mind muting whilst Samuel is taking the floor? Thank you.
Yes. Yes, thank you, John, and thank you for inviting us to make comments as well. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that we NDEV have participated both from the improved cooking, clean cooking, and electrification topics, primarily from the beginning of the review process. So majority, if not all, our input have been already captured in this version of the energy policy, and we are just reiterating that we have this support from GIZ, primarily from the energy, transport, and climate change cluster, particularly on energy access for both access to improved cooking and clean cooking technologies, as well as achieving universal access to electricity. Additionally, we have also shown interest in our being eager to see the policy coming out, so that we can also have the strategies and the frameworks developed, so that we can be able to contribute into the implementation, validations, and eventually collection of information and knowledge materials, packaging it for the sector. So we are actively participating in this and also looking forward for the success of this validation process. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that, John. So we have no particular input at this point.
Fantastic, thank you. And yeah, we really appreciate your broad engagement throughout the process and with the various different thematic areas in which NDEV is involved. I see there's also a question that's come in from Jimmy on the chat around whether there's anything in the policy around certification or standards for metering devices. So as far as I'm aware of, no, I don't think there is. And that was actually one of the suggestions that was in there in terms of the compiled comments around metering. So IoT enabled devices. So around enabling the generation of high integrity carbon credits through IoT enabled eCooking appliances. But of course, a key enabler for that is ensuring that those meters, particularly the appliance level sub-meters, the data collected by those on energy consumption can be verified, and the certification and testing procedures for appliance level sub-metering is not yet defined. So that would be a key enabler. I'm not sure whether that would then become too detailed for the energy policy itself. But I feel like that is an area where government intervention, particularly linked to the work that we're already doing on the development of the electric cooking tariff, would be quite important to enable us to capitalize on that new opportunity. I see another question has come in on the chat around taxation of e-cooking devices, and a suggestion for how we can either exempt or reduce tax from those products to make it more affordable. So yes, there is actually an existing section. In fact, that reminds me, let me pop back to the PowerPoint, because I prepared this slide, which I think helps us to look at the two sections, section 2 and section 3 side by side. So section 2, and apologies if it's a bit small on people's screen now, especially those that are looking on the phone, but the reason why I did this was because section 2 is what are the issues in the sector, and section 3 is what is the government going to do about it. And where I've highlighted these areas in red is where I thought a challenge or an opportunity had been identified, but there wasn't really a clear policy statement that related to them. And this issue that had been identified by Trevor here around taxation, I think is a key one. So we see unfavorable fiscal policy on the left. We see developed fiscal incentives on the right here. So there is a connection between those two. But what we don't see is the list of tax incentives mentioned when we look at the implementation matrix. So that policy statement: initiate innovative financing programs to develop supply chains for energy efficient e-cooking solutions. In fact, sorry, that is later down here. So develop fiscal incentives to promote affordability of energy efficient e-cooking solutions. So the expected output is mechanisms for affordable pricing for e-cooking solutions developed, and innovative business models that promote the adoption of e-cooking solutions developed. So for me, that felt like it's more aimed at the private sector, i.e. we expect companies to develop mechanisms like PAYGO or layaway savings, etc. Whereas I feel like the policy statement itself should have been more directed towards the tax incentives that Trevor is pointing to. So I think one of the comments that had already been raised was, can we specifically point to tax incentives for example, importation of energy efficient appliances, components and machinery for local manufacturing of appliances and cookware, and electricity for cooking, as well as VAT. So VAT is currently charged on both the electricity for cooking as well as the sale of energy efficient electric appliances. So I feel like there is a strong opportunity there to include that. I see Dr. Faith has got her hand up here. Faith, please could I give you the floor to unpack either a response to Trevor's comments, or if you had an alternative comment. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, John. This matrix, okay, let me just reiterate the words that you said earlier. The policy document is a very high level document. There are certain things that you may not see. If you are looking for the word like VAT or PAYGO in this document, you may not find it in terms of implementation. And the idea is, okay, after the policy has been developed, we need to now operationalize the policy and develop strategies. Within the strategies, we come down direct to with the specific interventions that we require to make a difference in the e-cooking sector. At this point in time, in this document, I think we would be belaboring too much, especially as you said, we need to really limit the content that is going into this policy. We don't need to expand the policy to 200 pages for us to communicate. The policy will be unpacked in the strategies, and if we go specific on the incentives and the fiscal incentives that we are going to do for the electric cooking sector, I think that would be belaboring too much. It's like we are already now developing the strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Faith. So just to clarify then, I think one of the suggestions that was made was on this fourth bullet point here under develop fiscal incentives, then in the expected output, simply adding a bullet point there that suggested tax incentives for electric cooking adoption and use. And so the KPIs would be number of tax incentives implemented. Do you think that that is an appropriate way of addressing Trevor's point?
Yeah, you can add a bullet point, but now you see, even there's a process that leads to some of these incentives being adopted. So if you commit the specific incentives within the policy document, it's like you are tying yourself. If it doesn't work out at a later date, what explanation do we have to give to the public? Because it may not work out because of certain things that we establish after we start going through the process or identifying, getting more information about how we go about implementing that tax incentive. At this moment, we haven't done any studies, so we really don't have the baseline data that can inform us. So if we do the baseline data and we find it's not practicable, how do you explain to people now after putting it in the policy?
So maybe that's what the expected output is. Baseline studies completed on appropriate tax incentives for electric cooking.
Yeah, we can put baseline studies, appropriate incentives for electric cooking put in place. Those are acceptable terminology.
Okay, great. And I think that is already a key part of the electric cooking strategy. So linking that here makes a lot of sense. So I just wanted to go back to the PowerPoint slide that I had earlier that was offering this side-by-side comparison. So the areas in red here are the ones that I couldn't see with an accompanying policy statement on the right. So reliability challenges in electricity supply and limited access in rural areas. I think that perhaps speaks to Stuart's point around the need to specifically identify off-grid electric cooking solutions. The tariff structure doesn't provide incentive for electric cooking. You could argue that that is perhaps included under the fiscal incentives to promote affordability of energy efficient electric cooking solutions. But I think it was perhaps expecting that to either be a separate policy statement or included in the implementation matrix for the fiscal incentives. Dr. Faith, do you want to jump in again?
Yeah, the idea of why we are reviewing this policy is if you look at the challenges, opportunities, and the policy statements, and you find there is no consistency, then you have the opportunity to give recommendations on the policy statements that should be added to address the challenges and opportunities that have been highlighted. So among the recommendations, that metrics that people are using to give the feedback, we need to just highlight an additional statement that addresses issues that have not been addressed among the challenges and opportunities. Thank you.
So on that front, would you agree that, or would you recommend that on the tariff structure, that's something that we bundle under the fiscal incentives and unpack in the implementation matrix? Or do you think that that's something that warrants its own policy statement? Because it's not just the dedicated electric cooking section where the tariff structure is mentioned. There are other sections within the policy document where it specifically points to electric cooking as not being prioritized within the existing tariff structure.
It's ideal to include a statement on the tariff structure because among the statements that are there, I don't see any that addresses tariff structure. I think it would be good to include that. Okay.
If anyone would like to, just whilst we're on the call here, we have another 15 minutes before the end of the call. If anyone would like to drop an example of a policy statement. So this is we see 6 of them on the right-hand side of the screen here. It's just a single sentence that says how the government will address a particular challenge or opportunity. Please do drop your suggestions in the chat here, and we can come back to them, refine them, and build up something which we feel could adequately address the need for electricity price restructuring. I think that was also something that I noted around the wording in some of the other sections. If we point specifically towards an electric cooking tariff, does that then tie us to developing a specific tariff, whereas some of the other mechanisms that are available can also achieve the same aim? For example, what we call the electric cooking tariff experiment at the moment is actually a rebate structure where people pay a full price for the electricity, but we give them money back based upon the measured consumption of electricity for cooking measured by an appliance level device. So if a system like that were to be implemented at scale, it could have the same impact in terms of incentivizing increased use of electric cooking appliances to grow demand and increase the social impact of electricity access. So I wonder whether the wording should perhaps be broader and say, implement electricity price restructuring to incentivize electric cooking, or something along those lines. I'd love to hear from others as to how you think we could address this, either in the chat or if anybody would like to unmute and give us a suggestion for how we tackle this challenge of electricity tariff structure not providing incentives for e-cooking. I also see several colleagues who are deeply involved in the process of that tariff experiment. So Kiguero, Jimmy, Tobiko, Monica, you guys have all been had a lot of time to think about this over the last year. If you would like to distill everything that we've done together in this huge body of work down to one sentence that could potentially enable us to implement what we've done or are doing as a small-scale experiment as part of a national program to improve access to electric cooking, what would that statement be?
So then, John, if I think you put us on the spot here, so I'm trying to think on my feet.
Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think a statement that puts in the picture electricity price restructuring or electricity price adjustment to enable affordability or to make electricity cooking as competitive to its competition. I think so. That statement I think would be okay for us. So yeah, electricity tariff or price restructuring, to boost adoption or to make electricity competitive to alternative cooking fuels. And that for me would be okay.
Okay, so if I've got that right, implement electricity price restructuring to make e-cooking cost competitive with other cooking fuels.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there is a need for us to be a little bit more precise about the types of e-cooking. So with electric pressure cookers, for example, for heavy foods, it's already cheaper than most of the other cooking fuels, with the exception of collected firewood, of course. But it's really the kind of the frying and particularly cooking with other appliances like induction stoves, infrared stoves, etc., where the price point with the current tariff is higher than many of the other cooking fuels. So perhaps maybe specifying that in a way, for example, implement electricity price restructuring to make full electric cooking, or what do people think of that, to make full electric cooking cost competitive with other cooking fuels? Samuel, what do you think? You're muted if you're talking, Samuel. Okay, maybe we've lost Samuel. Jimmy or Monica, you guys are also deeply involved with the tariff experiment. So that proposal of implement electricity price restructuring to make full electric cooking cost competitive with other cooking fuels.
Yeah, just to add on what Samuel has said, I think also removing the taxes or the extra charges that we have on the price of electricity will also help in actually making the cost of cooking with electricity with these energy sources that are not as efficient as an EPC competitive with LPG and other alternative fuels.
Agreed. And I think that links to Trevor's point about the tax incentives. That's one area where there are taxes and levies on electricity, which are preventing people from utilizing it as a cooking fuel because the total cost of the energy charge, which KPLC gets, and all of those taxes and levies makes electricity for cooking when you're trying to cook all of your food with electricity and have to use the less efficient devices to do so, more expensive than other cooking fuels for many people, obviously depending on the price you're paying for those fuels and depending upon the dishes that you're cooking. Okay, so I see we've only got 10 minutes left. So I just wanted to draw attention to one of these other challenges here, the very bottom one. So we've got eCooking can attract funding through carbon financing, which of course is very, very true, but it feels quite general. So of course, any kind of cooking technology can attract funding through, or any kind of clean cooking technology can attract funding through carbon financing. But I think what's unique about electric cooking is that it is easier to track the usage of electric cooking devices because it's easy to integrate metering devices or IoT into the appliances themselves. So I wonder whether there is a statement that we could make that just kind of tweaks that opportunity and ideally adds in a policy statement around electric cooking and leveraging carbon finance through IoT-enabled devices. Kigueru, is there anything that you might like to suggest around that idea, if you think it is indeed a good idea to do so?
Yeah, I think there's something that we can add to that.
Any suggestion for what we could add as a framing to capture that thought?
I think we can bring the aspects of high integrity carbon credits.
Okay, yeah.
With eCooking, given that we have also a renewable grid, I think we can combine that.
Yeah, okay.
Which will make the carbon financing attractive when you bring up the high integrity aspects.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And linked to the high integrity, I guess it would be worth us pointing to IoT as one of the key ways to enable the generation of high integrity credits.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So I'm looking at the time now.
Is to come up with a statement to combine all those things.
Yes. Yeah. So maybe something like enable the generation of high integrity carbon credits from cooking with renewable electricity via integration of IoT into cooking appliances. Something like that. It's a bit of a mouthful and perhaps could be streamlined a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Something like that. Yeah. We just need to
Okay.
reduce the amount of words, but ensure that we capture all those: integrity, renewable, carbon financing, and IoT together anyway.
Great. Okay, so looking at the time now, I think it's probably a good moment for us to draw it to a close. And maybe if I could ask whether there are any final comments, suggestions, reflections from the floor, and then perhaps I can give some guidance on how we might conclude this process of collating comments and submitting a combined submission on behalf of the electric cooking community of practice. And then perhaps I could pass over to Dr. Faith for any final thoughts and an official closing for the session. So firstly, let me open it up and see whether there are any final comments or suggestions from anyone that we have on the call here today. So I see a comment from Victor that's coming here around off-peak discounts, time of use pricing, etc. So that is mentioned in another section of the policy. It is not specific cooking, but it is a policy statement in I think the electricity distribution section. We could link it to the electric cooking section. Perhaps if we did add a policy statement around the tariff structure, then in the implementation matrix, perhaps we could suggest that considering time of use tariffs to incentivize cooking in off-peak hours, particularly the breakfast and lunch meals, could be a way of achieving that. And in fact, that is already a part of the ongoing work that we're implementing under the electric cooking strategy on defining or exploring what an electric cooking tariff could look like. Okay, so if there are no further suggestions, then allow me to suggest a way forward in terms of compiling these comments. I think, Dr. Faith, correct me if I'm wrong here, but from memory, then the deadline for submission of comments, I think, is the 16th of March, which is next Sunday. So I think we could leave this.
Yes, that is the deadline.
Okay, fantastic. So I think what we could do is we could kind of leave this open for the rest of the week. If anybody would like to share with us some additional thoughts, reflections on your own kind of individual capacity or on behalf of your institution, please do share us any further reflections that you have, ideally in the form of the comments template, which was circulated previously. Cypros, if you could also circulate that again, making sure that everyone that's on the call here is also included in that loop, because some people may have got this invitation from the WhatsApp group or may have been forwarded by a friend. So if we can make sure everyone has the policy, the implementation matrix and the comment template, if you're able to share with us any additional thoughts that you may have had during this session or after reflecting with colleagues, etc., throughout the rest of the week, then we can compile those together next week. We can then share with the group our consolidated submission, our draft consolidated submission, next week, early next week, and then invite any further comments on that, and then submit by the end of next week in line with the original deadline. Does that sound like a good way forward? I imagine probably no one will reply to me, but if anybody would like to suggest an alternative, now is the time to do so. Okay, well, I think it's time to pass over to Dr. for an official closing to the session. I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone who has joined us here today for participating in the discussion. A big thank you to Dr. Faith, especially for giving us the context of where our relatively small intervention fits in the bigger picture of this long process of developing this national energy policy and harmonizing between the many different perspectives within Kenya's energy sector, and for giving us this opportunity to feed into this framework, which will guide the evolution of Kenya's energy sector over the next 10 years. Big thank you to Pros for bringing us together and enabling the community of practice to engage and to feed into the ongoing process of finding where electric cooking fits and creating this electric cooking space within Kenya's broader energy sector. So Dr. Faith, over to you to officially close the session for today.
Okay, thank you, John, for leading the discussion on the policy. For me, I find this the most engaging policy development process I have ever participated in, and I'm really happy with the interest that stakeholders are taking into the understanding what the policy contains for them. So for me, I'm also happy for your contribution that you have given during this interaction. And we look forward to receiving more comments between now and the deadline given by John for submission of those comments, so that they can do the compilation and formally now submit to the Secretariat for compiling. So as he said, the policy goes over 10 years, 2025 to 2034. If you miss this window, know that you may not make any other policy intervention within those 10 years. So it's really important that you get access to that document and give your inputs for consideration. I thank John, Gamos East Africa, and the staff for organizing this session. It has really been a pleasure, and it has really facilitated this engagement. And I hope the stakeholders are also satisfied and they feel encouraged that this is a more inclusive policy-making process. So we look forward to receiving your inputs, and I can only wish you a blessed day until we receive your comments. Thank you very much, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Dr. Faith. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.